want to delay things too much. I think we'll just dive straight in to the session. We've got Maria Teresa is going to be presenting the participants in the Everything's Connected Slide Look project. There's 10 people altogether, so a lot of short presentations. Each will present for 5 minutes, and then we have the team from Kublikan, and then from Shadow Magazine, and then Monica Alcazar Duarte. And then we'll have time at the end for a discussion of about 30 minutes between the panelists and any questions from the audience. Just to remind you all again that if you want to ask questions, we don't have the mic on for this webinar, but you can ask questions using the Q&A box, and I will be moderating those and keeping an eye on them. So feel free to post them during the talk, and I will try to bring them up in the discussion session at the end. So I think without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Maria Teresa, to introduce the first part of the symposium. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks to our partners for this series of symposium, which are the UAL, University of the Arts London, Park, Climate Visuals 7, and Slide Luck Editorial. I'm Maria Teresa Salvati, editor-in-chief and founder of Slide Luck Editorial, which is a platform for photography, contemporary photography and multimedia that try to promote social change. In our third call, which was launched in February 2020, we wanted to reflect on the theme of climate change with a call themed Everything is Connected, trying to force a reflection on the connection between human action, climate change, and more broadly, trying to understand how climate change fits in the broader topic of climate justice. We want to talk about content, aesthetics, dissemination, and furthermore understand what's the role of contemporary photography and contemporary art in today's storytelling world, and in which way photography can really take on its social role, a very powerful social role, and in which way we can talk to a larger public as a way to inspire to have a positive action between planetary health and human health. Even Pope Francis said that it's impossible to be healthy in an unhealthy planet. So when we started to think about this theme, the pandemic hadn't started yet. And so what we really, then the pandemic, of course, started exploded globally. And we started to reflect on how everything is really connected, not only theoretically, but really in real terms. And we wanted to, with the projects that we selected, which soon will be presented through their own voice of the 10 photographers, we kind of wanted to understand the meaning, what we really mean by connection. And if we start to see that we are part of the nature, and this becoming in a way a new perimeter of consciousness of our role on the planet, can this become almost like an inspiration to feel, an inspiration and in a way also a responsibility to feel part of the problem as well as a potential solution in trying to change the trend of the current global climate crisis. Can, in a way, feeling part of the nature be an entry point into how we interpret what happens in the world? Because we felt that everything that happens, if it doesn't happen to us personally, the feeling is that we feel that what's happening is too far from us, and so we continue going on with our lives without realizing that whatever happens on the other side of the world is actually truly connected to the way we live, in the way in our life, in our daily lives. When we talk about planetary health, what we mean by it is a concept that links human health to natural health, and the link between the need to preserve biodiversity and in a way is a natural step for protecting human health and planetary health from diseases as well as the current pandemics. And we feel that for people that actually study or are curious or want to learn about it, I feel we can safely say that science is clear. But at the same time, we felt there is a big gap between what science says and what the perception is on a larger public. Often when I talk with my colleagues in the photography world, we believe that we have a feeling that everything is clear because it's clear to us. But as soon as you start to go out of our comfort zone, we realize that most of the time, a lot of people, the larger public, the masses, don't know what's going on and sometimes don't have access to some kind of information. So the point was, how can we really communicate effectively climate change and in a way inspire positive actions? So how can we really impact on people's actions and engage with the larger public? So this was our main focus about this call. In fact, I'll talk briefly about in a few minutes about the partners we try to involve that could help us to achieve this objective. I don't have answers about it. I only feel that it's the time where we start to ask broader questions, and the job is complex, but I feel that the answers could be found in true and expanded collaborations with the disciplines that have never talked with each other. They usually don't communicate with each other. And by this, I mean contemporary art, contemporary photography, politics, science, urban planners, architects, sustainable designers, any kind of disciplines that deals with climate change from their own perspective. I think is the time to expand our own fields, to learn from others and support each other in expanding the message that hopefully will reach a larger public. The situation is pretty exceptional and probably requires exceptional actions in order to change, in a way, the paradigms for communicating climate change. I think Slovak editorial with Everything is Connected, this was a kind of it's the seed. What we've done and what we will present soon is almost like the seed of an experimental project, which has a broader objective, which is that one of creating, helping creating some new paradigms for communicating climate change, also creating participatory narratives, expanding the field of investigation, analysis, and creation of new ways of communicating, and in a way to reach a wider public and inspire people and touching their hearts and their eyes in order to learn and to feel inspired to change their way of living in a way. What we did even prior to our the launch of the call was trying to involve some partners that could help us to do that. The 10 photographers that will present soon their works, I really want to thank them because they really trusted the way we decided to use that project. So it's not usually, if you know us, we transform that content into multimedia, and we go projecting through festivals or public spaces or whatever is the agreement with the partner. But in this case, we've done more than multimedia, also because there is no way to do projections because everything has been changed in terms of a program for festivals and effective real-time physical events. So we really are trying to see in which ways we can talk to a larger public by being at home, which is not easy. So thank you guys for really trusting our experimental process, which is not finished here. Again, this is just the beginning. I want to thank Kublai Klan, which they will introduce themselves soon. They are a collective of young Italian guys that work with new innovative ways of involving wider publics, and they really done an amazing work with kids, and they work a lot with image education, which is a very important topic in today's world, which is based on images. Shadow Magazine, it's a collective, is a multimedia platform based in London. We really, they act almost like activists, and they mix they mix languages. They use literature, poetry, illustrations, photography as a way to talk about important social topics. And we were really interested because they were launching the issue 3, where we are part of, which is about climate justice. And it will be very interesting to hear from their voices why climate crisis, the climate change, is very much a problem of climate justice. And also we invited Monica Alcazar Duarte, which is an artist that visual artist that works with nature, putting together nature, images, technology, science as a way to interact with the public. So this is pretty much what we are trying to do. And is almost like what we're doing is opening to everyone that wants to be involved and helping us to invent new ways of talking with a wider public in a complete new way, considering the exceptional situation in which we are living at the moment. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, so do you want to introduce the first people?
Okay, so in the next 50 minutes, the 10 projects presented, selected for Slovak editorial, Everything is Connected, will present their own works, and we will go in alphabetical order. We start with Sana Ahmadizadeh, sorry, I don't know if I said it correctly. Igor Elukov won't be present, but we will show you the multimedia we created for him. And Amy Vitale is not, she's in Africa at the moment, so she can't really access the internet. And also for her, we will show the video that is part of the project. So we start with Sana. Sana?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me clear?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm really happy to be among you today. I'm Sana, a social documentary photographer based in Iran. I'm working as freelance photographer now, and I try to focus on my personal project. A Place to Live is my first project on environmental issues. It began with a very personal story for me. Also, it was one of my first projects in photography. Throughout this story, I approached photography. I felt closer to my mother, and I listened to my mother's memories of the Iran-Iraq war. I started to tell my own story. I live in Ahvaz, an oil-rich and industrial city in Khuzestan, a province which supplies the major part of Iran's oil demand. In 2011, the World Health Organization called Ahvaz the most polluted city in the world due to dust storm and high concentration of particulate matter in its air. After each dust storm, a large amount of these particles remains in its air for several days, and every year, after the first autumn rainfall, a large number of people with respiratory problems visit the hospital. My story is about my personal experience and emotion that was affected by this environmental crisis. I went to the north of Iran, where my mother had immigrated 36 years ago after the Iran-Iraq war had broken out. For some time until I recovered from my respiratory problem. As soon as I arrived there, I felt uninterrupted associations and the inevitable similarities between my life and my mother's life created a new world for me. Okay, I'm gonna share my presentation. Can you see my presentation now?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. You can see the heavy dust storm in this photo, and this heavy dust has brought life to halt in this area and forced closure of schools and offices. This is another photo of dust storm. It should be considered that there is a chronic environmental stress in the region. As we know, Iraq is one of Iran's neighbors, and years of war, civil war, and internal conflicts, also environmental mismanagement, have prepared the ground for increasing desertification and drying up of the wasteland. And these environmental threats in Iraq can also be considered serious threat to Iran. Iran is facing an economic crisis at present, and that's a country that's subjected to sanctions that inevitably disregard the gravity of environmental issues. This photo was taken on a rainy day in Ahvaz, and the rain turned the dust into mud, which caused power station to stop working. However, last year was a very wet year for Khuzestan province, and Ahvaz faced a sudden flood, and the people and farmers suffered heavy losses. And following the rainfall, the number of dust storms in the city have decreased. But there is no any guarantee for the persistence of these conditions. Because in addition to the internal sources of dust, some of the other sources are located in Iraq and Saudi Arabia and are originated from outside the Iranian borders. This photo was taken on 2020. As you see, this environmental crisis has not been resolved yet. As I said, I went to the north of Iran, where my mother had immigrated 36 years ago after the Iran-Iraq war had broken out. And one of the climatic characteristics of the forests in the north of Iran is the foggy atmosphere. And the foggy atmosphere and the fading of the boundaries in the space that somewhat reminded me of the dusty space in my city. For instance, this photo was taken in the north of Iran, and the second one was taken in Ahvaz. The forest, the trees, the river and nature brought to my mind the fear and deprivation that my mother had experienced and felt in this place during her adolescence. It was an experience entangled with the war. It was an experience entangled with the loss of her brother in the war. You can see a portrait of Marty in the foggy atmosphere, and this portrait is a reminiscence of the Iran-Iraq war for us Iranian. According to some reports, people immigration from Khuzestan province in recent years has exceeded that of from the Iran-Iraq war. This is a piece of carpet. It was really shocking to see a piece of carpet lying on the ground like corpse. You can see the Iranian flags disappear in the fog. I think this story, this journey is so metaphorical for me. Iranian flags, Caspian Sea coastline, suspended routes, and a piece of carpet are so familiar sign for us Iranian, and sometimes the symbol of our culture and identity. Thank you so much. Thank you for making this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. Igor Elukov is not here with us at the moment. He couldn't come. So we will share with you the multimedia that we created for him.
This is a story about forces and elements that are indifferent to us and capable of destroying us, and about the need to seek harmony with these forces, about good and unkind premonitions and fragility of life. When I talk about forces and elements, I mean natural forces, including a person, as well as a larger scale cosmic, and more importantly, superphysical and metaphysical forces. It's impossible for humans to know the exact structure of the world and the presence of some important physical elements. A person is a unit divided by infinity, but at the same time it still remains a person, whose only task is to try to understand what is happening, try to find the harmony of coexistence with all these forces, using science, empirical experience and intuition, and at the same time always be ready for the end. Why is it so important to maintain harmony if all these multiple forces don't give a damn about humans? Is it a naive and infantile thought to hope for reciprocity? I believe harmony is beautiful. Beautiful in the sense of understanding harmony by Pythagoras. But nevertheless, I cannot prove the possibility or reality of the existence of harmony. This is a view at an ecosystem in which it is impossible to separate a man from nature and nature from space.
Thank you. Uh,
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Maria Teresa. My name is Pietro Locasto. I'm an Italian photographer and I'm based in Bangkok. So my interest with photography starts 4 years back. Actually, I had a pretty different life back then. I used to live in London and I had a career in marketing, but something was actually, I felt it was missing in my life. So actually, I had the chance to take on a trip to South America 4 years ago. And toward the end of this trip, I had the opportunity to spend some time with a group of indigenous people. In a place immersed in nature. And I had what you could call a spiritual awakening in some form. I really felt that the strong connection with nature. I saw the vein of the earth and the green blood of the trees. Around that time, photography started for me and became that way to continue on a journey of personal exploration. So last year, when I was studying photography in Nepal, I knew that I wanted to work with nature. I knew that I was looking for a similar space where I could continue on a journey of exploration that started 4 years back. So I came across the story of Tangyabasti, a village in the middle of a forest. So I decided to go and discover for myself. So I drove into the forest and I found a community that welcomed me from day one and a space where I could roam around freely. So this is my journey, and I'm gonna show you the picture of the work.
माथि आकाशको खोजीमा म हिँड्दैछु, चढ्दैछु, एउटा घना जङ्गलमा पाइला राख्छु आफ्नो क्षितिजभन्दा धेरै टाढा म खोजी गर्दैछु यहाँदेखि अन्धकार छैन बस्ती यहाँको प्रकाश नै यहाँको जीवन फेरि पनि अर्को पाइला चाल्दै यहाँको हजारौँ तहलाई अँगाल्दै म खोजी गर्दैछु स्वीकार्दै पनि अनौठो सम्बन्धको महसुस गर्छु मानिस र प्रकृति मिलेर नै अटुट बनाए जस्तो अचानक म पाइला फेरि पछाडि सार्छु लाग्छ बाटो बिराए जस्तो जता हेरे पनि त्यही नाजुक सम्बन्ध अनौठो चमत्कार छ रहस्य पनि अनि कैयौँ ठुला रुख एकअर्कासँग घाँसिएका केही स्तब्ध भएर बस्छन् केही खुसुफुसु गर्छन् मानौ म देखेर आफ्नो रूप बदल्न खोजे जस्तो यस बस्तीको अस्तित्वकै आधारमा अझै गहिराइमा पुगेको महसुस गर्छु सानो जुनकीरीको किरणले पनि न्यानो आभास दिइरहेछन् म खोजी गर्दैछु पछ्याउँदै पनि
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Mattia, and my project is called The Land of Horse. I will start sharing it so you can see the pictures. Okay. So this is a very personal project. I started 1.5 years ago, basically because I recently lost my uncle and my father because of cancer. So I start to investigate about the pollution in Italy. And I quickly found that Brescia and Brescia province, that is in the north of Italy, it's one of the most polluted places in Italy, but also in Europe. That's because it's strictly related with the name of the project, that is the Land of Horse, because there are a very high presence of quarry, of gravel, sand, and marble in this province. And in the 80s, mainly, the businessmen of the factories, they start putting the waste of the industrial waste in these holes and then cover it. So everything started more or less 40 years ago. And that was a very big business because to process waste is a very expensive process. So mafia very fast get in the business, and that's how everything started. Nowadays, Brescia is one of the most polluted places because it hosts one of the highest number of radioactive sites in Italy, one of the highest concentration of landfill in Europe. For example, in the municipality of Montichiari, there are more than 20 landfill for a population of about 25,000 people. And there is the biggest incinerators in Italy, and was registered the most important dispersion of PCBs, that is kind of dioxin, in the world. So I try to focus on two main aspects. That was the environment and the landscape, because I think it's very important to focus on which are the places that are really contaminated, because a lot of people go through these places every day to go to the job, to come back home, but it's not really easily to identify which are the most polluted places. Sometimes pollution is invisible. So I wanted first to take picture of these places. And on the other hand, I thought it was very important to focus on the people living there, trying to focus on the effect of this pollution, because sometimes we heard about statistics, data, but then which are the real effects of this pollution? And people reflect this. So, for example, the very high concentration of respiratory illnesses and cancer rates are very high in Brescia. So I visited and interviewed a lot of people who are struggling with cancer, who lost some family relatives because of cancer. And on one other aspect that I think is really important about this project is try to pay a tribute to the environmentalists, because I think that they are really heroes in a kind of way, because they try to fight this huge battle against a world system, a world capitalistic system that is against them. And it's really hard to spend your time, to spend your free time and your energy, try to fight against this system. But they are doing it every weekend, and when they have time, they prefer to do it instead of spend time with their family. So I wanted also to talk about their stories and to focus on their efforts. So that's why you can see more or less half of the photos are about landscape and yeah, the environment of Brescia, and the other hand, on the other half is about the people living there. A couple of pictures that I found particularly interesting is this one, that is the inside view of the Bonois Castle in Montichiari. I put this picture because the Montichiari municipalities get a lot of money from the business, the waste of business, and they had so much money that they decided to buy for a price of more or less 2-3 million euros this castle that it's part of the municipality. So first of all, is the real reasons why everything started is about money, and not considering, of course, the effect on the environment and the effect on the people's health. This is, for example, a photo about environmentalists, animalists that are trying to fight against the real huge presence of intensive farm. Just figure out that in Brescia lives 1 million people and 2 million pigs. So it's quite impressive, and this is they have the highest concentration of intensive farm in Italy. So of course, air is polluted, the ground, the soil is polluted, the water too. This is another interesting picture that is quite interesting for me, because this man is one of the first mafia boss that really started the waste business. His name is Nunzio Perella. He was part of the Camorra. Now is not being anymore, is not part anymore of the clan. but he was the first one in 1992 to speak about eco-mafias, so the mafia and the business related to environment and environmental scandals. So more or less this is it. So I will just show you some picture more. This photo is about the A4 highway. That is one of the most trafficked in Italy. But I put this picture because a lot of poisonous waste was found under the street surface. So it's really, that was about the issue that is really difficult sometimes to really realize where this kind of pollution, this kind of poisonous are really in close, how much are close to us and how close we go through them every day. This one is one of the main demonstration that one of the local community could organize in 2019, but it's not easy for them to convince people to join to this kind of demonstration, because it's not easy, again, to really figure out how big is the problem. So this is a photo inside the intensive farm. This is an aerial view of the marble caves, the quarries that are in the Brescia province. It's quite impressive to see from the airplane. And these are people that every day they really struggle against this situation. The last picture is about people that is misery and fever outside the temple, a Sikh temple in Brescia, because of course of the coronavirus measurement. And I put this picture because I think that it's quite, okay. Because it's quite obvious also due to a lot of scientific studies that this environment helped the coronavirus to be that mortal and that destructive in places like Iran, like New York in the first wave, and north of Italy. So the air pollution is really something that is going to be, it has already been something that was helpful for the coronavirus to be so spread and so mortal. Little. So that's it. And yeah, I think I will follow with this work because it's not actually really complete. There are so many places to visit and so many people to meet, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mattia. Thank you very much. Kabir.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Kabir. Thank you for being here. Maybe I'll just talk about what it is before. My story is Cyclone Fani. Cyclone Fani was a cyclone which had come to India in 2019, early May. My intention, I had never covered a environmental human collision before ever. And it was an election time in India, and the news stopped where they said 11 lakh people had been saved from the cyclone, and that's where the news stopped, even internationally, and nobody spoke anything beyond because there was an election year and everybody spoke about the elections. So I thought there really must be something there and people are not talking about it. So when I went there after a week, and even then the things weren't up to the mark, and the first contact had not been made in many places. So it was very difficult to be there in the first place. And I mean, I don't mean difficult emotionally to contact, as it was my first interaction of that kind. At the same time, I thought it was very important to talk about it and say things like this, because it's very easy in a day-to-day to talk about how there is going to be climate change in the future, and I mean how climate is changing and how it's going to affect us. Until it really comes to your living room, you don't know how it really affects you. So, and sadly that's the case, and everybody needs a wake-up call pretty much every day. And the urgency is not with everybody, that how the climate has changed and how it has reached and it has already reached many living rooms. And sadly, humans are in a space where we do not really learn from others' mistakes or others' losses very soon. So this is one of a story where a lot of people had to leave their homes and leave their lives and move out. And it's not just a story about a cyclone, it's more of a warning of what's in the future and how we need to react to it. So I'll start with the story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kavir. Isadora.
Sorry, I was muted. Hello, everyone. My name is Isadora Romero. I'm a photographer based in Quito, Ecuador. And I will share with you my project that is called Extremophiles. I will read a little bit about the process, how I get into it, but also all the questions that I was raising while working the project, so we can start a discussion, hopefully. I will share my screen. Okay. A year ago, I received a call that changed my life forever. Commander Corral invited me to be part of a scientific commission that will travel to Antarctica to stay 2 months on the peninsula of the White Continent. To be honest, I knew almost nothing about that place. In fact, I thought I was going to find polar bears. So immediately I started to investigate. Antarctica, as many of you know, is kind of an utopian continent. The Antarctic Treaty reaches over its territory. It stipulates that it is a place that does not belong to anyone, but is for all humanity. That only scientific research and activities that contribute good can be carried out. Territorial claims are on hold until the clauses of the treaty are reviewed and no military activity, other than logistical support, can be carried out there. It is the continent with the least human presence, the coldest and driest place on the earth, and also where there are many natural resources that cannot be exploited still. Antarctica, that continent of which we all have reference associated with this pristine landscape, and of course the penguins. But what about the humans in that territory? I wondered. Apart from a couple of documentaries, I had now not seen much about the human presence in that space. Also, it made me feel very strange to go with a scientific team, so I considered photographing with the same rigor and even collecting samples and data in a documentary, artistic, scientific, anthropological study. Ecuador is a country considered tropical, which bears the name of an imaginary line, a country that struggles every day with its internal problems and is one of the 29 consultative countries of Antarctica. This means that we have a voice and a vote about the manners of Antarctica. This really amazed me. Having a base in a place so outside of the environment was the strangest thing for me, as it is a place that does not belong to anyone. We have given names to the places that refer to our own mountains and our base in attempt to try to feel more at home. For the moment I put a step there, I knew that I wanted to document the strangeness and contradictions of our species trying to occupy a space that tries all the time to expel you. In theory, all the politics of that continent are wonderful. A communion of humans who seek peace and scientific advances. But being there reveals the latent tensions between military, geopolitical, tourist, scientist, and exploitative interests. How have we constructed fictions and symbols that make us believe that we have the authority to occupy spaces and claim them as our own, when actually we are one more species within those that come to this continent by seasons, an ephemeral species with a huge ego. We cannot stop erecting statues, worshipping our gods, leaving garbage wherever we step. Our footprint prevails and it seems so destructive, even if our wishes are the best. It is that sometimes we like to name nature as if it were a separate entity from ourselves. The positivist view of trying to master it prevails in our brains and can be seen clearly, even in this most inhospitable place. That is why I felt the desire to turn the camera towards ourselves, to become the object of the study. I collect photos as if they were samples, talk about scientists like they talk about stones, lichens, penguins, putting us all in the mass balance of life and death that is witnessed day by day in Antarctica. Perhaps accepting our own historically predatory nature or king might curse might lead us to think of a new consciousness. The Antarctic ecosystem, prevailing and brutal as it is also terribly fragile. It is known as the Earth refrigerator. Our limited presence echoes in the collapsing glaciers. Understanding ourselves in our relationship with it is important. Our persisting efforts to try to understand something that perhaps does not need human consciousness to exist.
Thank you, Isadora. Thank you very much. Michele Sibiloni.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michele Sibiloni. I'm in Uganda at the moment, where I've been living for the past 10 years. My project is called Ensenene, and it means grasshopper in Luganda. It's a project started in 2015 as a night exploration. I've heard of this season, of this phenomenon that happens about twice a year in Uganda, where they are catching grasshopper with traps. Traps made out of drums, metal sheets, and light bulbs. The reason why I was interested was because, first of all, I was attracted by the changing of the landscape, because with those lights, these places, they have a completely different feeling. But I was also very interested by this relationship, this strong relationship that even in our time in 2020, how we depend from nature, especially in places like Uganda in Africa, where there's 80% of unemployment. This chance of making money twice a year, catching grasshoppers, was it's a big opportunity for the people. And it's a bit like gambling. If you invest and you have a good season, you can make enough money to live for the whole year, or maybe to use the money to invest in other business. And it was something that that changed people's life. So I started to document this in 2015, and over the years, when I was doing it, the perspective has changed, and climate change was also one of the aspects that that made me think in a different way of this project, because over the years, forests have been cut down in Uganda, and that has an impact on the insects. So the seasons are not predictable anymore. Also, the amount of grasshoppers that the people are catching, it's much smaller, and a lot of people got out of this business. Only some major trappers who have been doing this for many years and have a lot of equipment are the only one who keep trapping these insects. Another important aspect is that it's considered a delicacy. Those are not locusts, are grasshoppers, so they're not destructive to the environment, and is a treat in Uganda. It's one of these goods that it's very easy to sell, and the cost of the insects is also quite high compared to the other kind of food, and this is a big opportunity for everyone to make money. And something that Maria Teresa was saying about everything is connected, about the fact that images sometimes are not enough to tell stories, in particular when we have this kind of complex theme to tell. Also made me think about how limited photography is, and this made me reach out for some people to help me with the different kind of media to add to the photography. For example, I have 3 people who helped me with text for this project that will become a book in 2021. And at the same time, to address other issue that wasn't able to do it only with photography and with a book, we are currently making a documentary right now for the 3rd year. This is actually the last year we will be shooting and will be editing in 2021. So this project started as a simple photographic project. I've been adding layers of text and film to be able to cover also different aspects of this phenomenon. I would like to show it to you right now. there are also sound in the presentation, so I won't be able to speak. Can you see it?
We're just seeing a blank screen at the moment, Michele. White screen.
Okay.
We saw it earlier on. Whatever you did when we tested it was working. So.
Okay.
Yeah, we get it now.
Can you hear the sound?
I'm not getting the sound, I'm afraid, now.
It's not muted. I don't know why it's not working.
Is it the video we produced with you?
Yes.
Because in that case, if it's complex, maybe we can ask Monica to tap into that folder I sent before and play the video for Michele.
Because I just
yeah, we can't hear the.
I just played it, but I don't know.
Can you hear the sound?
No, I was hearing it before. Let me try to open with another software, just very briefly.
I think it's quicker if Monica does it because she has access to the final videos of everyone. Monica?
Okay, it's working now, I think.
It's working. Okay, if it's working, it's fine. Maybe go back and start from the beginning.
Doesn't seem to be playing for me, Michele. I'm not quite sure what's happening there.
Michele is not working.
Oh, it's not working.
No.
Okay.
Monica?
Okay, so
it's working now.
Yeah, we can have it. Okay, we have it. But again, there is no sound.
Okay, I don't know. Still no sound?
No sound, I'm sorry. Monica?
So I'm here ready to share it. So
yeah.
Michele stopped sharing his screen. I can do it now.
Yes, Michele, I think he stopped sharing the screen.
Okay, so here we go.
Thank you very much, Michele.
Thank you.
Jakub Stanek, please.
Hello, everyone. You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. I would like to show you my last project. It's called In Anticipation of the Sun. In a winter 2017, my then 3-year-old son asked me why he couldn't go outside for 6 days straight, even though he was perfectly healthy. That was basically the project. My first attempt of explanation ended up with a black line drawing of smoke and the title of the project itself, In Anticipation of the Sun. In the beginning of 2017, smoke alarms in Poland turned red, and all acceptable norms not even reached limits but got to critical points. Air pollution in Rybnik, in small city in Poland, extended on one in China. This up to that time had been unseen situation in Poland. I had to understand what smoke exactly begins and means, what it causes, how it affects our life and health. I had to understand myself to be able to explain to my son. I became fully aware of sources, reasons, and the imaging impact realized. This is going to be very painful and incredibly personal story. Not only about my son and health issues I had been facing for years now, asthma, lung diseases, but also about feeling helpless, lost, trapped, and trying to find solution answers that can be implemented. Smoke is a silent killer. Start with lungs and bronchi, transfers to our circulatory system. It causes strokes, extravasinish skin changes, attacks every cell of our body, and destroys it from inside. Smoke is everywhere. In soil, water, air, smoke is in us. We all are the one to blame. We are the one to change it. Smoke is two-dimension problem, global and local levels are critical. Here in Poland, authorities still agree for solution offer from power station, Bełchatów, the biggest European institution that emits 100 tons of CO2 daily. All we do or not do matters. All our choices matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jakub.
Thank you.
Misha Vallejo.
Thank you, Maria Teresa. Hello, I am Misha Vallejo. I'm a photographer and audiovisual storyteller based in Quito, in Ecuador. And I would like to show you my latest project, which is Secret Sarayaku. I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. So Secret Sarayaku is a project about the everyday life of an indigenous Quechua community of the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest, which is called Sarayaku. This project started as from an environmentalist point of view, from an environmentalist and activist point of view, but soon it turned the attention to a philosophical aspect. During the 5 years that it took me to do this project, I became very interested in the Kausak Sacha, or living forest philosophy of this indigenous community. The philosophy states that everything in the rainforest is alive, has a spirit, and is interconnected to each other. So if you damage something, it will come back and damage you as well. For me, this was like a microcosm of the whole earth, where everything is connected, like the theme of this open call. So the Sarayaku community is fully committed to the protection of their territory and of the Amazon rainforest. They became involved in a very big lawsuit against the Ecuadorian government when the government entered into their territory in order to exploit oil without asking them for permission. The community won this case, and since then they have adopted a really strong communication strategy with the outside world. What they are doing is that they are using the internet and social media to spread their ancestral message about the conservation of nature and about how everything is interconnected to each other. So these were the two main focuses of this project. The spiritual part of it, the spiritual and philosophical part of it, and also this cyber activism of this indigenous community. But during these 5 years, I felt that because of the complexity of this issue, photography alone was not enough to tell the whole story. This is why I started to record audio, shoot videos, interviews, gather drawings, oral stories, and a lot of material that this community was so kind to give it to me. So after these years of working with them, I was a bit lost on which were the outcomes, which would be the perfect outcomes for this project. And then it came back to me that since they are using the internet so much in order to communicate their own way of living, maybe I should use the internet also to communicate this project. So what I did was I built an interactive web documentary, which I'm gonna show you right now. Just a second. I need to change. The interactive web documentary is Secret Sarayaku. It can be accessed at secretsarayaku.net. It's free and open worldwide. I'll just play the intro real quick, and then I'll explain what is it about. So this interactive web documentary is split into 6 chapters that have to do with the circle of life, which starts at the birth and ends with the death. But for the Quechua, when they tell stories, their stories are not linear like for us in the West, but they are circular. Sometimes they don't have a clear beginning or a clear end, and some stories mix themselves with others, and they form a sort of a spider web of stories. So this is more or less what I tried to do with this website, where you can, for instance, access a chapter about the youth. You can read more information about it in the captions, about each picture. The textual information I took was from Western mediums, as well as from indigenous ancestral knowledge, and both of them are on the same level of importance in the website. Here are the things I was talking about. Videos with interviews, videos with contemplative aspects of their everyday lives. In some cases, you can go a level down, and then you will have external links to, for instance, the Sarayaku's official Facebook page, or the memes page, or an Instagram account about the community. Which also tries to expand the narrative. It's not only my voice, it's not only my perspective, but it's also theirs, and it's a lot of theirs. Okay, there's also a sort of a shortcut which you can take, and this is a bit what I was talking about when you have this spider web of knowledge, where from one chapter you can jump to the other without even realizing it. So if you were not paying attention, this icon here changed. So now we are at the children's chapter, but with more or less of the same topic. So this is not a linear narrative. It is built as a spider web or as a virtual jungle. So my aim is that the viewer gets in and then gets a bit lost with this information, but then they discover something for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Misha. We'll talk about it in a bit. Last one is Amy Vitale, which unfortunately can't be with us today. And we're gonna share with you the video that is part of the Everything is Connected project.
Preparing the milk for the aliens. I want them to have strong body. I want them to have strong bones.
Before we established this place, people couldn't imagine someone feeding an elephant.
Hosting elephant is something challenging, but elephants are someone can call a friend.
As a community, we were losing many elephants. We had to act quickly.
We've lived with elephants for centuries, but it wasn't an easy relationship. They can be dangerous and might kill us if we meet them unexpectedly. Over the past 25 years, we lost many elephants because of poaching and an ongoing drought. Without the elephants, we were all suffering. Our ecosystem was dying. We began to understand that elephants are the heart of this land and nature's greatest engineers. They guide us to water and bulldoze small trees, keeping the land open and grassy. For us to thrive, the elephants too must thrive. Something had to change.
Number Hotel 1, this is Romeo 1, how do you read over?
1, let's count up 3. Hello?
To protect these elephants, it was our dream to create a sanctuary for those that became orphaned. At Reteti, we bring injured and sick elephants back to health. We nurture them until they are ready to return to the wild.
just shows don't give up with the bottle. If we give up, she'll give up.
They need somebody who loves and who cares, not somebody who can be discouraged.
To think of them going to the well after they accept us and we are now friends, it is very painful to see them going. I will live to appreciate them for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm feeding Lemurujo and switch. Sweet babies.
With each elephant comes an unforgettable bond, marking the beginning of a transformation. We are taking care of the elephants, and the elephants are taking care of us. We now see that when we coexist with the wild animals we once feared, our whole community benefits. We are all deeply connected to one another and to this earth.
Wow. Thank you guys. I'm really proud of having you in this journey together. And I really want to thank you again for trusting the whole project and for sending your work. And I have to say that beyond the 10 selected, we received incredible amount of work from all around the world. And I think we need to find a way to take these stories to the largest public possible. I also want to thank Valeria Recchia, which has been the producer of all the multimedia we produced as a Slide Luck editorial, and has been my my right arm for the whole Everything is Connected project. I'll give the word to Rika Cerbarano, which is one of the founders of Kublai Clan, the collective we worked with for this project, that she'll tell us in which way we collaborated and what they do as a collective. Thank you, Rika.
Hello, thanks Maria Teresa, and thank you, Paul, and all the team who organized this panel. I'm very glad to be here on behalf of the collective. Let me share my screen for the presentation. So before I start talking about the project we launched in the occasion of the LEDEC editorial call for the eyes of children, I want to say just a couple of words about Kublai Clan, what we do, and so just to give you a little of context. Kublai Clan is a collective which explores widely accessible ways of interacting with photography and visual culture for installation, curatorial, educational, and editorial activities. For instance, here you have the installation views of the Fontanesi project we exhibited this year at last year at Gibellina Fotorod, and this year at Image VV in Switzerland. And as you can see from these pictures, we designed an installation which interacted with location and in terms of shapes and by creating a path that ran through the space. And this of course had an impact on the people, on the way people engaged with the installation and so also with the photograph. And this is the way we work. What we do is try to create a connection between people and photography with the aim to stimulate a reflection on the way we use and perceive images today. We do that trying to reach a wider audience, let's say not the people used to go to museums, for example. And so we are always on the search for accessible and inclusive ways of interacting with photography and with installation. And we do the same with educational projects. It can be workshops or more complex projects putting together research and reflection which have exhibition or publication as an outcome. And so here we go to Through the Eyes of Children, the project for Slide Luck editorial open call. We have been wanting to work on a project involving children for a long time and to somehow stimulate a reflection on visual communication and visual education. And this was the perfect occasion to work with children for us, as climate change is a compelling issue, and we need to raise awareness among the younger generation. It's very important and urgent. So in the occasion of this Lilac editorial called The Everything is Connected, we seized the opportunity and launched the project through the eyes of children. And so this is the first edition, the first version of it, and focuses on climate change. So as a starting point, we said there were a set of questions for us, which are very important. And these questions are even more meaningful if applied to the issue of climate change. So how do we look at the images we are surrounded by every day? How much time do we spend reading and interpreting them? In which extent is our gaze filtered by our social beliefs? And above all, is photography enough to express and illustrate the issue of climate change? And as a collective and as individuals as well, we understand that photography is deeply entwined in the discourse about visual communication. And we are aware that in our practice, we can't look only into photography, but we need to extend the discourse on to visual culture in general, from photography to graphics, from video to illustration and so on. And so we believe that there are moments when photography actually is not enough. For example, sometimes photography is not enough if it's not supported by extra info or text explaining what is actually going on in the photograph. And we all have bias which affect the way we read a photograph, making us believe we already know which story that photograph is telling, for instance. So we decided to make a project about images, which doesn't show any of them actually. And we asked children to tell us what they were seeing in the pictures selected from the Lilac editorial open call without giving any context or previous explanation. So what you see here, these words are the extras from the interviews we held with children from 6 to 12 from over the world. It was important for us to extend the project to children from any countries. So the interviews were held online, and we asked parents for collaboration in interviewing the children. So the children's comments are surprising and illuminating and touching also. And some of them really make you think about how the gaze of children has a different social filter comparing the one we have as adults. This unfiltered gaze of children, in our opinion, give life to observation, leaving every judgment suspended and opening up the imagination towards worlds made of pieces of reality and pieces of fantasy. And so this is, let's say, the part of the research. Another interesting aspect for us is the contamination and the convergence of different media and platforms, and how it can help to reach a wider audience. That's why we conceived the project as a cross-media exhibition with two levels, the online and the offline. The first part, the offline, consists of the dissemination of billboards, flyers, and posters in the city of the many events and festivals which partnered with the Lilac editorial. Then, by locating the billboard and framing the QR code embedded on it, it will be possible to access the second part of the project, the online one. The QR code will in fact link to the web page, a web page where the user can actually see the image related to the comment, to the words on the posters and the actual description of it, and discover more about the Lilac editorial project. So the graphics are a kind of trigger points to reach this Lilac editorial website. Due to the lockdown, many Lilac editorials festival partners had to cancel their physical events, of course. So for instance, in the occasion of Photobug Festival, that was this past weekend, we translated this kind of cross-media journey on the Instagram platform, which, by the way, is an interesting place to reach new and wider audiences. And moreover, we thought that it was interesting to use a language that it's not really typical of this platform, for instance, without showing any image. And so from the Instagram stories, you could swipe up and go to the Photobug Festival platform, hosting this Lilac editorial video. So in conclusion, considering that what we have experienced so far and that the project is still a work in progress because we have to develop the website and we hope to have the opportunity to test the offline part very soon, the answer to our starting question is that the observation from children can offer us the chance to look back at these images through a new lens, free of our bias. And we believe that this project is important because it underlines the ambiguities and the ambiguous nature of images and the need to involve young people as active participants in the discourse of visual education. So we hope that people engaging with this project can learn something new about climate change through the eyes of children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rika. Thank you.
Thank you.
The girls from Shadow Magazine, Hannah and Isabella.
Hi. So Isabella is going to share her screen and I'm going to talk. Thought that would be easier. Great. Okay, and hopefully that works for everyone.
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. So my name's Hannah, and with Isabella, we're the co-founders of Shadow, which is a multimedia platform which drives change at the intersection of arts, activism, and academia. We use art as a tool for change, for a change in understanding and a change in and social change. And we really believe in the importance of collaboration across different disciplines and across different countries, because we believe you can only really understand an issue if you get a really global view of it, which is another really important pillar of Shadow, is the idea of self-narration. So we think those who have a lived experience of an issue or an injustice are best placed to advocate for meaningful change within that space. So Shadow is a platform for people to take control of their own narratives, to tell their own stories in different ways. We decided to create the third print issue on the theme of climate justice, because we think it's important to reframe and reimagine climate change as a social justice issue. And this is our front and back cover of the latest issue, which we have the Everything is Connected photo series in as well. We think climate justice is best understood by acknowledging the realities of climate injustice. Certain people, places, and communities are disproportionately impacted by the physical impacts of climate change. We wanted to platform these people who usually don't have a voice in mainstream coverage of the climate crisis, and we wanted to do this in a really creative way. And to understand climate change, to understand climate justice, we need to look at how all these different issues are interlinked. And so that's a big thing that we've been looking at with this issue of the magazine, is the intersections of the climate crisis. We've got a few spreads to show you from the magazine, which illustrate this really well. So the first one is a piece from an author who's in Oakland in the US. She looks at the intersection of the Black Lives Matter movement and the climate crisis, and explores how Black, Indigenous, and people of colour communities are disproportionately affected by climate change. So that was a US perspective. And then on this next slide, we have the gendered violations of Israeli occupation in Palestine. And this offers an explanation of how issues relating to the environment intersect with military, political issues and impact women's rights specifically. And then something that gets talked about quite a lot is fashion and the fashion industry as a whole. So this spread looks at workers' rights and the fashion industry, which is a huge emitter of It's a huge emitter, and it's also got a current history of workers' exploitation. And the factories are usually in places which are most vulnerable to climate change, such as Bangladesh, which is where this piece is focused on. Garment workers earn poverty level wages and are the most vulnerable to the impacts of the climate crisis that the fashion industry is accused of creating. And what was really interesting about this piece, and actually a lot of our pieces, because as people who have spoken before me have said, we got to work on this before COVID and before lockdown, and so a lot of our pieces are reflective of coronavirus and what has happened as a result of it. And so, for example, in Bangladesh, there are 4 million garment workers, and it's estimated that half of these workers lost their jobs due to cancelled orders and other impacts of coronavirus. So these same places which are most vulnerable to climate change are also most vulnerable to coronavirus. So there's kind of a new intersection with the pandemic that has really shown its head. And then our next focus of the issue was a real representation of frontline communities. So the first, so basically the idea that climate change is something that's happening in the future is just simply not true, because for a lot of countries, for a lot of people, it's happening already. I mean, as we can see in so many of the Everything is Connected projects. So for example, if we look to Indigenous communities, according to the National Geographic, Indigenous communities protect 80% of global biodiversity. They have the knowledge and have always been practicing the solutions for decades, and so we must listen and learn from them. I mean, we've seen it relatively recently, you know, in Australia with all the bushfires. Apparently an Indigenous technique of backburning could have prevented the spread, but because of the historical exclusion of Indigenous voices, they weren't listened to, and as a result, their homes all got destroyed disproportionately. So this spread was by Diana Yaka, and she is an Indigenous author who was writing about, you know, the power of ecofeminism. And yeah, frontline communities are often silenced in mainstream coverage, and as a result, they're also silenced when it comes to policy making. So it's really important. It was really important for us to elevate Indigenous voices around the world. And then slightly a kind of different frontline community perspective. This was from Vanessa Nakate, who is a youth Ugandan climate activist. And she is an example of someone for whom the climate crisis is a lived reality. It's not something that will happen in her future when she grows up. It's happening right now. She's seeing it in droughts, in floods, in kind of the ruin of the communities around her. So this is a first-hand account where she calls for accountability and action from the international community. And as a young person herself, she's only 23, she's just been named one of the BBC's 100 Women of the Year. And she keeps using her platform to elevate other young people who are making amazing change. And that also leads on to our next spread, which was about youth activists. So young people are making the world connect to the climate crisis in a really tangible way. It's their future that's being taken away, and they'll see the impacts of climate change the most, and so they're fighting to change it. And we've seen it across the world in like mass mobilizations of youth and youth activists on a global level, using a mixture of protests, school strikes, media campaigns, and art to change the discourse around the climate crisis. We introduced a variety of youth activists on our platform ahead of this, and we're really interested in the idea also of using social media as a kind of a platform for activism, which is happening so much with young people. These two activists are just two of the people who are featured in our magazine. Carlon on the right is an activist from the Marshall Islands. So some of the biggest threats facing the Marshall Islands include coral erosion and US nuclear testing, which has poisoned both the Marshallese people and their environment. So Carlon runs a yearly camp which raises public awareness about this, and he also represented his community at COP25. Shie, who's on the left, she's 18. She's a climate justice activist originally from the Otomi peoples, an indigenous group in central Mexico. She's a youth coordinator and a youth organizer, and uses all sorts of different means, but especially organizes people over social media and on the internet as well. And it's just a really interesting way to engage the world with what's happening on the ground. And then finally, I mean, we don't really need to give too much of an introduction to Everything is Connected, but visual storytelling is really at the core of everything we do at Shadow. If it's a written piece that we're given, we give it to an illustrator who's interested in that specific topic. So we can gain a new perspective, because we think art can make you understand things in a way that words perhaps can't. So the magazine is full of art, and of course it's also full of photography. And thanks to Everything is Connected, we were able to bring the work of the 10 photographers to the forefront, and using their medium as a powerful form of visual storytelling and communicating climate change as climate justice. And for us, it's an important source of cross-contamination, photography and representation of climate change through people, places, animals, scenery. Everything is connected and everything is intersectional. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, Isabella. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll head over to Monica.
Hi everyone. Good evening, almost. Thank you for having me here, Maria Teresa and Paul. So I'm Monica. I'm originally from Mexico. I've been based in London for about 18 years now. And today I'm going to be talking about the space exploration project I've been working on since 2014. Space exploration might seem unrelated to ecology, but back in 2014, when I was doing the research and production of the images, I found out about the overview effect. And this refers to an experience that astronauts have once they've left into the space and they can see Earth in its true cosmic setting as this small, tiny little blue marble that is in the middle of nothingness. They experience the same effect once they're coming back to the Earth as well, and they can see the Earth's atmosphere as this really thin layer that separates life on Earth and the external universe or external space. So in a way, the overview effect refers to our relationship to Earth as a whole, as a planet, but also it refers to our position in the universe even. So when I was editing the images for a photo book of this project, I kept on wondering, how can I include this very complex concept? Because it's very important to include it as part of this larger narrative. And so I discovered augmented reality. And what augmented reality allowed me to do almost immediately was to connect to a younger audience, but also it allowed me to engage critically with these new platforms that I think are changing the way we tell stories and we see images and we see the world as a whole. So today I'm going to be talking about images that you can find in my photo book, The New Colonists. And I'm going to be showing you one of the animations that come as part of the augmented reality app that comes with the book. Before I forget, I think I should mention that around minute 4 of the presentation, there are some images that may be of distress. They are trigger images, so just need to warn you about it. And now, let me share my screen, which is always very stressful. Let's see how that works. So when I started working on this project, I realized that there were elements to this story that were not included in the narrative of space exploration. One of them being the overview effect. I kept on thinking, how could I be somewhere I could not? I couldn't go to outer space or the moon or Mars. I couldn't go to the future. And yet there were so many issues that needed to be spoken about. to be included to conform a larger narrative. I found that these layers of non-included meaning needed to be inserted in the story that we tell ourselves, but most importantly, in the story that will be told to the coming generations. So now I'm sharing, bear with me for just 1 second. I found augmented reality as a tool to communicate these excluded layers of meaning that I felt was important to include. While building the overall narrative for the book of this project, I kept thinking, what would a Latin American woman have to say about an endeavor that is mainly Western? This is when I grounded the images and myself in the mundane, the small, the everyday with its quiet mysteries. I want to be clear. This is not an attack on science or technology. I deeply admire what the human mind can do. It is incredible. But it is how sometimes these inventions, these endeavors, are used as a means to sell an agenda of growth, as a means to sell growth as progress, as a means to convince ourselves that we're in control, and that in the instances that we're not, that we can gain control. This is what alarms me. So when I was allowed to enter the wonderful space facilities with their magnificent human inventions, I kept on thinking, resist these incredible objects of technical sophistication. Resist their magnificent ingenuity. Resist their monumental aspirations. But of course, sometimes I couldn't resist. What humans can do is absolutely breathtaking. And when I couldn't resist, I decided to find the other side of what progress could mean. By seeing the human, the fragile process that is discovery, the guesswork, the trials and errors that go unknown, that go unnoticed. I tried as much as I could to not see the conclusion, but rather the unanswered. See the small, no hierarchies attached. Progress as curiosity, as unanswered questions, as embracing never quite knowing. This is what I look to capture: the mystery, the unknown, the chaos, the out of control.
Currently, the legal regime for what countries can do in space is governed by the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, arranged under the auspices of the United Nations, and now has about 102 signatories. And the Outer Space Treaty forms the current legal basis for exploring space. And it prevents nation states from appropriating other planetary bodies. So no signatory to the treaty can land on the moon or on an asteroid and plant a flag and claim this to be theirs. Because it was written before private activities were envisaged, it's silent on what private companies can do. Now that private companies are getting interested in possibly mining the moon or asteroids, there is an ambiguity as to what the treaty will allow private companies to do, as distinct from governments. And it's quite important that this ambiguity is cleared up before these private companies really get going.
I read this to you all from self-isolation. 2020 is the year. I write to you with the smell of the sky and the drying autumn grass. And I can't stop myself from looking at the horizon and think of nature as a distant surface, or an envelope for our ideas of evolution, classification, and perspective. I wonder when is that we will finally figure it out. Nature doesn't belong to us. We belong to nature, with its seashells, with its larvae, with its minute bacteria. We, the masters of the land, are no different than the bacteria of this pandemic when it comes to nature. The best example of these are natural disasters. We only need to watch a volcano erupting, the debris of a tsunami, or the force behind fire or a tornado to know this. In the midst of their destruction, of their debris, the floating chairs, the melting houses, everything seems equal. I lived through several earthquakes in Mexico City. The bending concrete, the melting buildings, the electric cables, all dancing in chaos, and us all, whoever was caught in it, feeling like nothing, just a small part of nature. Today, in the era of anything is possible, anything except for stopping ourselves from destroying what we have here already. It all starts with words, with a global warming, then climate change, then ecological crisis. But this ecological crisis, as we call it now, isn't it more of a disaster, a collective failure? The still heads of dead animals looking back at us hold no more meaning than the generations of humanity, of flora, of fauna, of chairs, of dust and debris. It is so important to understand that we are not at the center. We have made this mess, but we are not the masters of it all. We will all come and go with nature following its course, while all we want is to grow, to expand. Is humility more needed as opposed to growth? Are we really in control of evolution? Can we really stop ourselves? What do we need to stop ourselves? As I read this, thinking of this performance for you all, is Wednesday, November 25th, 2020. We are in second lockdown in England in the midst of a pandemic, a clear result of our arrogant attitude towards resources, towards solutions, towards a position in the universe. And this pandemic is not any more distant or coming from the unknown future, from the obscure depths of nature. As I write to you, the image that I hold of nature becomes a multiplicity of moments and stories and sounds and shapes, an overlapping of forms, an infinite chaotic dance without hierarchies. So as you can see, I'm very interested and invested in utilizing these platforms that we use today to communicate, to expand our vision that we call technological advancements such as Zoom. I'm very invested in using these and trying to understand how we can communicate ideas better using these platforms today.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Paul, I guess we finished the presentation, so I think we have 10-15 minutes to...
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we'll probably keep it to, let's say 15 minutes, so we're not finishing too late. But well done, everybody, for keeping almost the time. And with such a large number of presentations, that was a great achievement. If you have got questions from the audience, please do type them into the Q&A box or into Facebook comments, and I can try and pass them on. But in the meantime, Maria, do you want to start the conversation going with some of the participants?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few questions, but I wanted, I don't know if any of the 10 photographers part of the Everything is Connected project want to share their opinion about how do they feel on about the photography being used as a means to get to, let's say, a larger public, but also in an unusual way. So have you thought about it? What about, putting art and your art at the service of a larger meaning, a larger message that can go to a different public that maybe cannot even be able to appreciate some kind of visual communication. So, for example, the project we've done with Kubla Khan with the kids is a kind of an unusual way to use photography. How do you feel about using your art for a wider objective, a wider vision, if you want. I don't know if any of you want to share as an opinion about it. Anyone?
Yeah, I think that it's pretty
Mattia.
interesting. Yeah, to use images, because I think that to visualize the effect of this climate change is absolutely important. But as Michele Sibiloni told before, is sometimes it's not enough. So it's interesting to use it mixture with the other arts, to use it also in other frame that are not just the classical photographical ones. So I think it's absolutely interesting to use it, but maybe it's not enough to push just on a visual way. So it's interesting when you can mix it with the other tools.
Totally. Thank you. Anyone else wants to add something? Meanwhile, we have a question from the public, Paul Marotta, that is asking if, as Kavir said, everyone needs a climate change wake-up call every day, how do we, as photographers, wake up people from the numbness of it doesn't affect me? Does anyone wants to answer?
Well, I don't think that there is a recipe for that. I think we can only act in the best way we can and influence other people on our daily basis. But I think something that like Club Clan is doing and involving like the young generations and education is very important, because I think the next step, of course, is good to be aware that any of us need to know what to do, but I really believe that also institution and politics, let's say, they have to give us guidelines and examples to follow, and maybe even like prices for acting in a certain way, because I think it's great if we all try to behave the best we can, but unless there is an example from above, from the institution, for the masses, it's very difficult to act.
Yeah.
In my
Totally.
opinion.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, well, we saw all the projects you guys shared with us, and I think if you see them, it's very clear that everything is connected, even migrations, the migration we all complain about in certain areas, because there are a lot of people arriving in new areas. If you start to understand that most of these migrations are related to climate change, to inability to some population, most vulnerable population, to adapt to the acceleration of this kind of events, you realize how why these things are happening. So through the projects we saw, I think clearly we are almost like defining meanings of connection that makes us realize that even if it doesn't affect me directly, in a way I'm connected to it. The problem we have at the moment is that these projects have access to a very limited public. So I'm trying to work with institutions, with politics. We're trying to involve urban planners. We're trying to involve artists, scientists, politicians, because without, as Michele was saying, without an involvement and a big injection of institutions that are able to bring important content to a large public, there is no change that we can see. It's only about telling between ourselves what's happening in the world. We are great, we're doing these great projects, but then it feels like these projects stay just within the insiders, and that's I don't think the changes will come within our words. So I think everyone needs to put at the service of they need to put whatever they have at the service of a bigger aim, and involve people that have the ability to reach a larger public. Definitely the education going to kids is fundamental because it's our future, and we need also to learn their language as a way to talk to them, but also they need our expertise and our project, if you want, as a way to you know, raise awareness and going wider in terms of reach. There are other questions.
Maria?
Yes?
Can you hear me clear?
Yes.
I think photography is just one of the medium that we can communicate through it. But the social role of contemporary photography is undeniable. As a social documentary photographer, I think a part of our work is photography, and the other part, which is more important photography, is public awareness. We can use the power of combined medium to expand awareness by involving people from different culture, different social and economic cycle. And not only as the object of study and not only as the object of photography, but as active participant in change. For instance, I think it was really interesting to me that part of our project came into interaction with children. And in the other hand, the advance of technology and its influence on photography is disregarded. And we can take advantage of this progress as an opportunity to expand awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. I read another question from the public, Rossella Ferrorelli. She says, it could be very interesting to reflect on how anthropic landscapes can serve themselves as media to deliver the message, passing from being part of the problem to being a part of the solution. Some pioneer experiences seem to be emerging worldwide. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but definitely for example, the urban landscapes can become really a tool, a media themselves to carry, to vehicle important messages. We are trying among the figures and the partners we are trying to involve in the broader Everything is Connected project, as also urban planners as well, because we, in a most simplistic way, we actually need to go to people and use public space as a vehicle for interacting and bringing important topics and content to a large public. Does anyone else has anything to add? Paul, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's really, I mean, it was a great session. I think this interesting question around what's the best way to connect with people, what kind of images work, and that's kind of at the center of all of these discussions we've been having through this symposium. I think it's interesting to see the range of different work that we've seen today, and a lot of people are using, as Rosella suggested, this perhaps more symbolic, these kind of images of things, of spaces and places, rather than necessarily just of people. But I think what I'm really excited by is people pushing at the edges of what is a photograph and how photographs work in conjunction with other media and as part of other media. And we've seen some really great examples of that today. So, and I think the other key theme as well coming out from today is working with communities, not to tell your story about them, but to collaborate in that storytelling process. And I think that's the big shift, hopefully, that we're beginning to see, is away from the photographer as being somehow the kind of sole author of a project into something much more immersive and more collaborative and
yeah,
you know, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the question then becomes, how can we make the audience part of that process as well? There's some great examples of how the people whose lives are being documented have become part of the process. I think the question is, how can we then make that next leap to getting audiences to connect more directly with the projects and with the people in the projects and so on. So I think Misha's project's got some interesting ways to begin.
I was saying, Misha, if you want to tell us a few words about
perhaps,
it.
Yeah, talk a bit about how you've managed to empower the people you've worked with to get their message across, and then how much feedback or response they've had from their audience.
Yeah, so this was a really important part of my project, because as an outsider, I was really worried about that. I am from Ecuador, but I am not indigenous, so I consider myself as a Western man. And yeah, so what we discussed together with the communications department of Sarayaku was what was the best way to present this project, and I wanted them also to be involved in it. So we came up with this idea that within this web documentary, within this web platform, there will be a part totally managed by them, which is the blog, where they will put their own news, put whatever they want. I don't have any editorial decisions whatsoever on there. And we also decided to create an Instagram account, which is Everyday Sarayaku, which is also managed by them, and it fits on to the blog. Where also it's only their photographs, their videos that are uploaded. And I took, with the permission of the community and working together with Jose Miguel Quetzanti, which is the head of the communications department of Sarayaku, we took parts of their declaration of causa exacta, of this philosophy, and included them both in the book and in the website, together with the Western the Western knowledge, as a form to put them on the same level of importance and to communicate what the community wanted to say themselves. And of course, when we already knew that it's gonna take the shape of this web documentary, we also started to conduct interviews. I asked Jose Miguel to make interviews in Quechua regarding the themes surrounding the web structure, about childhood, old age, and so on and so forth. And so this was also like a joint work. And yeah, like that was more or less how we tried to do it, because I was really aware that I'm an outsider, although I'm from Ecuador, and I was really compelled that they should have a voice also in my project. And at the end of the day, when I was editing for the book and for the website, one of the opinions I heard the most was from them. If there was a picture that were totally disagree, I would consider not to put them, but gladly it did not happen.
Thank you, Misha. Very interesting. So from observer and researcher, photographers can become connectors and facilitators for connecting publics, connecting the subjects with the larger public. It's interesting. Let's see where we get. Paul, do you want to?
Well, we're well over time already, so I think fantastic. Thank you so much to everybody, to our amazing presenters today. Thank you again to Seven Interactive for hosting it, as always. Thank you to the team at Park, and of course, above all else today, thank you to you, Maria Teresa, for fantastic, setting the whole project up in the first place, and your great moderation today. We will be, the little plug for myself, I'm going to be doing the Seven Interactive book talk on Tuesday next week, talking about my book Photography Rules that a couple of the people in today's session contributed to, including Maria Teresa. It's not actually my own work, but it's kind of some of my ideas about how to break and make the rules of photography. And we will be having more of probably another couple of these symposiums on climate change as well. So just thank you all very much for attending and staying with us for the session. Great to see such a committed audience and people really getting something out of these sessions. And I did share the archives on Facebook, but do go back and look at the previous symposiums as well. So just thank you all very much. And thank you, of course, as always, to Jenna behind the scenes for making this all go so smoothly. So once again, thank you to all the presenters, did a fantastic job and super interesting discussion as always. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye.
Thank you, Maria Teresa.